Hello everyone, time for another general update on what's going on in my wargaming world. It's going to be a bit of a mixed bag this, quite a lot to talk about at least, if not to show you. So I may once again witch one for quite a long time, but just to give you an idea, essentially I'm going to show you what I've got painted recently for the Wild West project, for my Bojess project, and then I'm going to show you some purchases I've made off eBay, and then the big one is I'm going to show you some models that I had printed on my newly acquired 3D resin printer, and then the bulk of this video will probably be me talking about 3D printing. In the future I'll make a new playlist, I think, and remove 3D printing from the kind of wargaming playlist and give it a playlist of its own, because it's a massive subject and I'm really excited about it. Anyway, so to begin with, not much painting done really, because I've been away, I've been involved in other things, so haven't got a lot of painting done, but I have finished another 5 figures here for the Wild West project. These are Black Scorpion miniatures from their Tombstone range, and they are I think, yeah, I'm not sure, I can't remember, but they're definitely Outlaws. I think they're Outlaws group number 1. Once again, really nice resin figures, slightly larger than the average 28mm figure. I think they describe them as 32mm. In fact, to give you an idea, you can see this guy with his rifle pointing up in the air doesn't actually fit under the boardwalk there. His rifle is touching the canopy at the top, so they slightly outscale this range of buildings, but it doesn't worry me. Apologies again, the weather's so dark today that I brought a building up to put it under the desk lamp rather than show you these figures in the Wild West town, because the lighting conditions aren't particularly good. Anyway, with the 4 other figures from Black Scorpion that I've shown you already, I now have a group of 9 Outlaws, and I realise now it's high time I got on and actually played a game of Dead Man's Hand. So I've been reading the rules, and that's the next thing I'm going to do, is actually play a game, because I've got far more figures than I actually need. I want to sort of populate the town a little bit more with civilian figures and so on, and make more buildings and furnish the buildings with bits and pieces. But yeah, I really need to play a game of it now. It's been since about April. Anyway, so that is the Wild West. Now on to where I've got to with my Foreign Legion and Bojess project. So as with the Wild West, I haven't got terribly far. I've painted up 12 Tuareg from Castaway Arts. This was from the initial order that I placed with them. So I showed you these figures unpainted in a past video. Yeah, they're such nice figures. Not much to say about them really, other than it's going to be fun to paint up the entire army. I might try and lighten the blues a little bit on the next batch. This is slightly, I don't know, it's kind, I wanted them to be dark, but I think a whole army with these sort of shades of blue would look a little bit dark. So I'm going to go for a colour, or mixing a lot of more colours, like the blue on the turban of that chap there. Yeah, but really pleased with these, and you know, certainly going to be sticking with Castaway Arts for my Tuareg, and I've got those other colonial figures as well from them that will get done sometime in the future. So that's them. Next up, my eBay purchases. Right, now, I was talking about eBay on my last update and how I kind of approach it. I go in and out of love with eBay, I must admit. What I tend to do, especially at the moment, given the lack of wargaming shows, the absence of wargaming shows, is I tend to treat it like I'm looking at a bring and buy stall at a wargame show. And so I sort of do exactly the same thing. What I'm looking for is, in particular, unpainted lead. I don't really enjoy buying painted figures, even if they're well painted or badly painted, and even if they're very cheap, because I just don't like that kind of feeling of having to strip paint off, and but I certainly go for job lots of unpainted figures if they're a good range, and they're a reasonable price. And that's the case with these figures here. These are just going to go straight into my lead mountain, and they may never see the light of day again, but I know I've got them now. They are, they were listed rather, I should say, as Eureka 28mm American Civil War figures. That caught my eye straight away, because I wasn't aware that Eureka did American Civil War figures, so I sort of zoomed in on the image, and you could quite plainly see that they were American War of Independence. Now, had they been listed as American War of Independence, I'm pretty sure they would have been snapped up, or at a better price. I paid £50 for this group of figures. I think there's about 50, just over 50 figures here. If American War of Independence, I've noticed, is very popular, on eBay, and it does tend to get, there do tend to be bidding wars on them. I was the only bidder on this, and the seller only put them up. He put them up for a sort of short term as well. It was only for like a day or two. The auction, it didn't last very long. It wasn't even a week. So I was lucky to get these, I feel. But I don't wargame the American War of Independence. But it's a subject that's always appealed to me. So I know I've got them here now, and I know I like Eureka figures, and they're rather nice. I don't think I've opened, so I won't open any. I don't think. Oh yeah, here we go. This bag is openable, so I can give you a closer look. So basically what these are, there are enough for a couple of battalions of Continental infantry. You've got the command stands. These are all flutists here. But you've got the command stands, and you've got enough for, as I say, a couple of battalions of infantry. So there's certainly, I've got my eye on the new edition of Musket and Tomahawks, so I might put them to use for that at some stage in the future. I don't know, but I was quite pleased to get these. And you might think £50 is a lot of money. I was a bit worried because the seller actually put the invoice. He bought them from Fighting 15s in the UK, and he put the invoice in with them, and he only paid, I think he paid £57.75 plus postage for them. So you might think, well, it's not much of a bargain, but that was actually in 2007, and they've obviously been in his lead mounting. They don't look as though he actually even opened them either. So he put, his classic wargaming practice of seeing figures late at night, maybe when you've had a few drinks, think, yeah, definitely want to get into that, and you spend the money, and then they get the figures, and then they just sit in your lead mounting. But yeah, as I say, 2007. If you costed these now on Eureka's website, then it's about £104 worth of figures. So I got them with a little 50% discount, which I think is worth going for. Now the seller is interesting in his own right, because his eBay name is something like English Collectibles, but you really get the feeling with the items that he put up on sale, that is clearing his lead mounting plus clearing his loft or attic or something like that, getting rid of all things that he's never gonna never going to need in the future, make a little bit of cash from it. So he had a lot of job lots of wargaming figures, most of which there was competition for them, and the price went up quite, to beyond what I thought was worth picking up. But he also had, well, I should say, some other things. They might still be there, like his vinyl collection and some little bits of militaria, a kind of Roman, helmet, reproduction helmet, stuff like that. But a couple of little ornamental things. So it was a bit of a kind of mixed bag. But the name English Collectibles makes it sound more like he's a sort of an eBay trader. But as I say, I don't think he's going to be putting up very much more. It did look like he was just clearing out some unwanted items. And the next one I'm going to show you, I purchased from him as well. So I'll just get that out. Right, now this next batch, I'm not quite so sure whether I got a really good bargain. I think I probably paid about the going rate for all this. I don't know. See what you think. Another thing that I always look at on eBay is models for the game Wings of War. It's now known as Wings of Glory. Sometimes you can get an airplane at a reasonable price, sometimes you can't. They tend to go for upwards of £20, sort of £20 or more. And this chap, same seller, English Collectibles, he was clearly a big fan of the game Wings of War, because unlike those Eureka figures, these have most certainly been taken out of the box and used. It's basically, I'll show you all the different boxes separately, but he put up this, it's actually quite a substantial job lot of the games and extension packs from Wings of War, and again, I don't think he was very astute in the way he listed it, because had he focused on the fact that there are quite a number of planes here, I think he probably would have attracted a lot more attention. But again, I was the only person that placed a bid on these. I paid £70 for all this. I think I got a fairly good bargain. But anyway, as I say, the thing that drew my attention was that the Wings of War, what's it described as, revised deluxe set, actually contains 4 aircraft. Now, you know, that alone, if you think £20 per aircraft is sort of the going rate, that would be £80 worth of items just there. Maybe other eBay purchasers were a little bit more aware than I was, but the planes are pretty bashed up. They were in there are a lot of missing bits off them. I've done quite a lot of repairs on them, and they've come out all right. I had to glue bits back together again, but there's still other bits, like on this one you can see there's a strut broken off and missing there, and I think the machine gun from the top is missing. The best one, the one that's complete as far as I can see, is von Richthofen's Fokker dry plane. So that's quite a nice little model. You've got an American pilot here. Again, there's a missing strut and an Albatross which has got a missing machine gun. But they're not bad. You know, inside the boxes, it's chaos, so it was chaos. There are tokens, you know, there were just tokens and cards all jumbled up, some of them in elastic bands. But in fact, as I say, this guy must have been an absolute Wings of War fanatic, because when you actually look inside the boxes and go through the list of contents, there's far more in these boxes than there should be. So he obviously had a lot of other cards and boxes and so on, and he's sort of finished the game and just piled them all into one or two boxes, not very tidily. I've tidied all this up now, but there are far more flight stands, for instance, than you need. Loads and loads of far more damage cards than you should have. I'm going to have to go through all these. I've just put them into their categories of plane type, but there are a lot more of the flight manoeuvre cards than are required, so I'll have to sort of sort that out if I ever use them to play a game. But basically there's an awful lot here, and I think I have got quite good value, because the planes aren't bad. They'd probably fetch about £10 each if they were sold individually on eBay, I would have thought. But there's another plane here, separate plane in another box, and this is in much better condition. You know, it's got all the appropriate manoeuvre cards and the correct number and the flight stand and so on. So there it is. It's another Albatross, I think. Oh no, hang on, it's a two-seater. Not entirely sure what it is, but you know, that would probably fetch £20 on eBay. So got that one to add to my collection. There was also the original Wings of War box set. This is just cards and so on and tokens in here. I've got this box already. This was the original game. But again, there was a lot more in here than you actually, would normally acquire. Some of the tokens not even broken off of there. Card, punched out because he clearly had a lot already. So this particular box hasn't seen much use. But anyway, so there's that. Superfluous to my needs, but got it. And then finally there was the World War II, original World War II Wings of War box set. So this is like the other one that I've just shown you. This comes with just cards and tokens and so on, but I've always been curious about it. It never seemed to be as popular as the World War One version of the game, so I thought it was, I was interested just to see what was in it and have it in case I ever do get into the World War II version of the game, get some models for it. And again, when I opened it up, a chaotic jumble of tokens and so on. I've just put them all into a bag for the time being. They're already spilling out of the bag. Clearly been used a lot, and again far more in here than is listed in the list of contents. So I would say I've got quite a good bargain here, in particular because there are far more cards than you need. There's also cards for what is clearly a Pacific War combat. I mean, this looks to me as though it's meant for it to be for the sort of Battle of Britain theatre, but there's lots of Japanese and US Marine cards and this kind of I think it's this one, sort of a sort of grayer looking sea, basically sea rather than land on the cards. So that, but also, as I say, there shouldn't be any planes with this box. And buried right at the bottom, there were two very dusty. I've cleaned them up a little bit and slightly damaged. The props were bent on one of them, and I fixed that. But two model planes. So, no flight stands, but can get around that. But these had obviously been left on a shelf for years, if not decades. They were covered in, dust. They still are, a little bit. I'll have to pay them a little bit more attention to get them cleaned up. But they're not bad models. Two Messerschmitts. And as I say, they were in that well there, buried in all these tokens and so on, which was just layered all over this. So he hadn't really looked inside to see what was in them, and was clearly anxious just to sell them quickly. But because he didn't kind of pay much attention to looking at them and listing the appropriate contents, they were kind of hidden in there as well. So I think £70 for all that is probably a good price. I don't regret having got them, and it's added to my squadrons of airplanes for the game and so on. So they're gonna, they'll see the light of day again in the game one day. Right, so now the big one, 3D printing. Just get some of that out. don't worry, I will put out some wargaming related objects in a moment. This is just something to have in front of the camera to begin with, which is the test object that you can print out just to try the printer out before you embark on your 3D printing adventure. Yeah, I've had my eye on 3D printing for quite a while now, and had a little bit of money come back to me because my trip abroad was finally cancelled recently, so I put some of the money towards a 3D printer. I've been quite inspired by a number of YouTube channels, Walkabout Games, Paintbrush Pirate, and Wargamers Anonymous. I've been really interested to see what they've been producing, and to me the appeal of 3D printing is that it frees you of what I think of as the sort of tyranny of scale. Once you see a model that, or a figure that you want to acquire and print, you can scale it to any scale you want. In the past, I've often been frustrated by not being able to acquire terrain in the appropriate scale. I mean, 20mm scale wargame is classic for that. It's really hard to find 20mm scale terrain. And I go on a lot, as you know, about the disparities in ranges of figures and how they define 28mm, and I've had this long-standing issue with my Crimean War project that the Eureka figures that I'm using are a kind of very odd scale, 18mm, and they're also not complete range, so there's things like there's not a vast amount of artillery and so on. But now, I've got the ability to be able to. I've got the possibility of being able to find models of a gun or a redoubt or anything that is appropriate for that period. Take it, and it might be scaled to be 28mm or something, but you can just diminish the size. So anyway, this is, as I say, I had my eye on I think all those channels I mentioned previously were using a resin 3D printer. I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, because I'll show you the printer that I've got. And they were using a particular printer called the Elegoo Mars, and because I wanted to be able to print some 28mm buildings for my Beaugest project, I wasn't really keen on getting the Elegoo Mars because it's got quite a small build plate, which means you have to print quite small sections of a 28mm building and glue them together. So I was waiting for a model that's slowly being released called the Elegoo Saturn, which is capable of printing larger, single prints. And then I got sort of a bit impatient, and I saw that this printer called the Anycubic Photon Mono X, which actually has a bigger print capability again. So in the end, I just went for it and purchased it. It had some very good reviews, and I've been having such fun with it. This model, it failed to print the first time I tried it, my first attempt, and what I got was just that sort of base, and the rest of it didn't stick to the build plate. And I kind of already knew what I had done wrong. So basically I'd zeroed it with a little bit of the sort of like cling film stuff, protective film over the imaging plate. This will all make sense in a minute when I show you the machine itself. So I simply re-zeroed it, and this came out, and it's well nigh kind of perfect. There was a little bit of a flaw, but I think I damaged it down there. But this gives you an example of what you can achieve, you know, in terms of printing. Anyway, so I had already purchased a couple of months ago, in anticipation of getting the printer, some files. You can get a lot of files online, things that are free to download, but the better quality stuff is obviously marketed commercially. And I had noticed a guy in Germany. The website's called Najewitz Modelbau. I'll put a link to it in the description below. But he did a whole load of different types of building that he sold. I think each set cost €63. But there's an awful lot of models in, an awful lot of files in that. So I got his Arabic and North Africa one, which has got a lot of buildings like a Foreign Legion fort and so on, mosques, all kinds of things like that, which I'm going to be working on. But I also got a Wild West one. Now I'm not going to be printing any buildings for my Wild West projects. I've already got I've already ventured out on that, using foreground models, which I'm perfectly happy with, and I don't think it's going to really fit very well with 3D printed models if I mix them in. I'm going to stick with MDF for that. But I got them because I'm also sort of slowly building up, getting ready to play a 15mm game called Western, which is going to require some buildings. So I thought, again, you're back to this whole business of not being constrained by scale. You can print these models any scale you want. So I got the Wild West one and started to print some buildings up for that, or started to print this building. I haven't done anything else. So this is a church which is intended for the Wild West, but to my eye this would suit 15mm American Civil War, which I have a lot of. It is just remarkable to me how much detail there is on these things. I mean, if you look at there's a few flaws in the printing. There's a little flaw there, and because it's hard to get them off of the build plate, I actually managed to damage that corner. So there's a piece missing, and this snapped off, and I just glued it back on. But it's just fantastic. Fine detail on it, and pretty crisp and clean. I don't think I've done any cleaning up on this at all. So there's no excess resin on it. Look at the windows, and interior detail as well. In 15mm, I would normally glue the roofs on and so on, but I'm really not sure what to do now. There's loads of pieces. I'm going to paint them all up, partly because there's a lot of interior detail, before I glue them together. I mean, this sort of the door and the porch don't really fit onto that very cleanly because of the sort of base there. So I'm not sure whether to file that down so it has a good grip. That's probably what I will do, and then glue it on. And then there's the roof to it. But again, even things like This roof hasn't got any detail on the interior, but the inside of the porch definitely does. So leaving the roof off would enable you to see that detail. But then, this is just one building out of, I can't remember how many for the Wild West, but that building, the file contains masses of extra detail. So this is the altar, which presumably would go something like that. There's a little organ that you can print off. Not quite sure where that would go. Probably have to sit something like that, I don't know. You get a single one of these, a little pew, but of course you can print as many as you want. So at the moment I've only printed 2 off, but you could print that so quickly, because it's the height that matters. So what you would do is you would duplicate that one file over and over and over and have them spread out on the plate, and it would print it probably, I don't know, 20 minutes at the most, and you'd have a whole church full of pews going in like that. Of course, once you've done that, then there's no possibility of putting figures in there if you clutter it up too much. But I think I will do that, and then just have the roof detachable so that you can see all the detail if you wanted to on the inside. So it's just so exciting because it's just reminded me of all the things in the past that I've stalled on because I haven't been able to get the terrain. I mean, classic one is, I don't think I've ever discussed it on the channel or shown you, but I started a long time ago on the Russo-Japanese War, and the buildings in sort of Manchuria and the north of Korea and so on are very kind of distinctive, and some of the battles featured these sort of farms that were used as strong points, but never been able to sort of source a 15mm building that looked like it. And now this company, Najibitz Modelbau, do a set of Chinese buildings, again for 28mm, but you can just scale it down. It's wonderful. So as well as the North Africa and Arabic building set and the Wild West set that I've got, and that, by the way, I think it's the Wild West, I can't remember, it might be this other set. I also got American Civil War, and again, lots of buildings. I think I've discussed this in the past about the American Civil War. Lots of buildings that you just can't get commercially. This is the Dunker Church from Antietam. I have got a model of this, unpainted at the moment, because JR models, is it, that you now can get through Magister Militum. Or you could, yeah, I got it through Magister Militum. They did used to do a Dunker Church, but now that seems to have disappeared, so it's no longer available. And as far as I can see, you can't get it in 15mm anyway, or 28 or whatever. So I printed this off. You can see on here there are a few bits that need tidying up, and it's a little bit kind of warped there, but again, I think it's just incredible detail. The windows are sort of, the lattice work on them, but this comes off quite easily. I have been picking away at this with a scalpel, and it does come off to reveal the brickwork underneath. So needs a little bit of cleaning up, but I'm really pleased with that. And there's a friend of mine who's big on the American Civil War as well, and we did have this discussion a long time ago about the Dunker Church in particular. So I printed another one, copy off to give to him. This one, the model actually comes with another floor here, but the two, you have to choose one or the other. The roof doesn't fit over this, And I think this is because, as I say, it's meant to be a 28mm model that I've just scaled down, and I think probably they had in mind skirmish wargaming, maybe. That you could keep all these three pieces separate, and then have it like that for the game. Take the roof off if you wanted to. Put figures inside, and then have this separate if you wanted to represent figures in the attic. I don't know, but it's there as a possibility. I don't think the intention was that you could cut this roof off. I wouldn't like to try that anyway. It is quite brittle, so I think it would probably damage it. And I think the main reason they have this sort of hold here is that when you're printing, you don't want to allow any resin to remain in any hollows, because it won't cure. It'll just be raw resin, and then it causes you problems later on. But yeah, this is fascinating to me as well. It goes back to another one of my favourite themes and rambles, is about copyright and so on. Nazareth's model very clear that you can print as many copies and whatever scale you want of this, but you can't then sell them unless you purchased a license to sell them. They retain the copyright on the files, so they still own the copyright for this. But you can print as many times as you want. Obviously, something like that you'd want to print over and over several times. But that takes you into this realm, as I say, of when is it all right to print something and when is it not? Because the printer is as much a copier as it is a printer. One of the things that's got me very excited, and I've seen some really nice examples, is that there's a process called photogrammetry, and now anybody is able, if you've got a mobile phone, you can take pictures when you're out and about. So you could go to a museum, for instance. All you need to do is take pictures of an object from 50 different angles, and there's some free software on the internet that allows you to reconstruct those 50 images. So you're basically a photograph is a 2D representation of a 3D object. So what photogrammetry allows you to do is to reverse that process and recreate a 3D object using multiple 2D images from different perspectives. So you could go into a museum and say take 50 photographs of the Sutton Hoo helmet, and then come back home, use the software that's free to download, and create a 3D file of the Sutton Hoo helmet, which you could then model. You could print off. You could do it with weapons. You could do it with anything you want. Where does the copyright end? Because museums, some museums I've been to have stopped you. There's no photography is allowed. Other images allow you to take photography if you don't use a tripod. Well, as I say, you can get very good, accurate pictures with a mobile phone now without using a tripod. All kinds of possibilities opening up. Anyway, I'll take you downstairs and show you the printer itself and give you my impressions of the process of 3D printing. Right, here we go then. Excuse the state of my kitchen. So I purchased a printer and a wash and cure machine. A bit more on that later. So there are downsides to this. It's expensive. I think you can dispel this sort of idea that you save money on printing objects this is a very expensive printer. It's sort of, I think I paid £639 for it. The Elegoo Mars is about £250, so it gives you an idea of, how much you have to sort of step up into if you want better performance. But even £250, if you're printing models that would cost you £10 commercially for £1, it's still going to take quite a while before you've made your money back. So it's expensive, and it's also, I'm very tight for space in my house. I didn't have any available work surfaces other than in my kitchen to put this on. So I'm working in quite cramped conditions here, and that is a factor because it's resin printing, unlike the plastic printing, is very messy. And if you're trying to do it in a tight space, you end up, getting in a bit of a pickle. Anyway, just to give you a very rough idea, because this will be, obvious to a lot of people, not already known to a lot of people. There's a cover which is to protect the resin from ultraviolet light, because the resin cures when it's exposed to a particular wavelength of ultraviolet. The resin is, you pour the resin into this vat here, which comes off. I hope I'm not blocking this too much. So this is the resin vat. It's transparent. I forget what they call this plate, but this is quite a critical part of the process. And here you have the light emitting screen. So light will shine through this of a particular, and only the area that you want, only the area of resin that you want exposed to light will emit light, and the rest of the plate is masked. So this is the build plate, which again you have to remove. Points in there. So essentially you want the resin to adhere to this build plate rather than to the transparent screen of the vat. So this has to be the area that it adheres to, rather than that, and normally that is what will happen. You have to keep this quite clean so that it hasn't got any kind of impurities on it. Otherwise that would attract the resin to the cured resin to that rather than to this. This isn't intended to be a how to do it kind of guide. It's just giving you an idea of the, what I was talking about earlier. So unlike the plastic printing, which will layer, the build plate will be down here and it will lay heated plastic onto the build plate and slowly build up. Here the model is kind of printed sort of upside down, as it were, and it's suspended from the build plate. Now, to my mind, it strikes me that is, you have to think about 3D printing in a slightly different way, because there are areas that you have to support. As the print develops, it has to be connected in some way to that build plate. Otherwise it will just float about in the resin tank. Now, those connections are described as supports, but really, if you're talking about resin printing, they're not supporting it, they're suspending the model. And it strikes me as well that with a bigger build plate, you can print bigger objects, but bigger objects are heavier, and therefore the suspending supports are more kind of critical. Having got your model though, this is where I find another thing about the resin printing I'm finding quite awkward, is it's very, I don't know if it's toxic, but it's certainly a huge irritant to your skin. So you have to wear gloves. You have to take this off, and you have to detach the model with using scrapers and spatulas from this, and then clean it of any excess resin. But all this plate as well is covered in resin. I mean, even now, I've cleaned this quite thoroughly, and even now I can feel a kind of greasy kind of feel to it, even though I've been washing it in alcohol and so on to get it clean. So there is as well as the resin that you're using to print the model, and it's not cheap, it's about, I don't know, about £50 a litre. You're also wasting a hell of a lot of resin that you're cleaning off of things like this. It tells you in the instructions to wait for the resin to stop dripping before you remove the build plate. But a lot of resin just lays on here. It's quite thick and viscous, and it just lays all over this. So you're basically throwing it away. Anyway, onto this. So basically, you get it off the plate, being careful not to spill it on any surfaces, because that would be a disaster as well. So you're trying to use you got your rubber gloves on. You're trying to handle this and then handle other items without, getting the resin off of your gloves onto any of the other surfaces. So what I've been doing is I bought this sort of Tupperware thing. I move this across to here, and then I scrape the model off, and then I put it into this wire basket here. Now the wire basket comes with this other model here, which is the Anycubic Wash and Cure. Again, it's got a UV protective lid on it. And this is a container full of isopropyl alcohol. Now again, not cheap. I mean, this can hold 2.5 litres. It's about £9 or £10 a litre. But you can use this over and over. Yesterday when I left this, it was looking pretty cloudy and brown, but because I haven't disturbed this in a good 12 hours, you can't see it, but I can see it. There's a layer of uncured resin at the bottom of here, which has washed off a lot of those models that I cleaned up earlier. So what you do is that you allow that to all settle. After about 30 washes, you have to get rid of it. You allow it to settle, and then you can skim off the alcohol, get rid of this resin, and then put the alcohol back into this container. And this is another thing, that this is uncured resin. Somehow you have to cure it before you throw it away, apparently. You can't wash it down the sink. But to do that, you have to leave it out to sort of dry and be exposed to ultraviolet light somewhere. If you put it in the garden, I'm worried about cats and birds and things drinking it, poisoning themselves. So I don't want to do that, but it would take forever before it's actually cured. So I don't know what to do. I mean, all the things like wiping this down afterwards, you end up with kitchen paper covered in uncured resin. What are you supposed to do with all that? I'm just sort of bagging it up and putting it in the rubbish. And all the time, you're getting it when you take the gloves off, and you feel like you've got it on your skin. I feel like I've got it on my skin now just from touching that. So I'm constantly wanting to wash my hands and so on. It is a bit of a pain. It's very awkward. One of the downsides. But anyway, you've got your model in here. I'll turn this one on. What's the plug is handy? I'll show you how it works. So you put the model in the tray into here. Now this machine is actually fitted with some other supports so that you can attach a build plate here and have the build plate as well suspended in the tank of alcohol, and that would be quite handy because it would be a much cleaner way of cleaning the build plate at the same time as you're cleaning the model. But this wash and cure is designed for the smaller Anycubic models. There isn't a wash and cure machine designed to fit this larger Photon Mono X build plate. So if you had something like an Elegoo Mars, you could put that on there, or one of the smaller Anycubic build plates. You could fit that rather than the wire basket. Just put my glasses on to show you this. So really simple. You put it onto the wash function. You set a time, so you've got choices of up to 6 minutes. Some things will need longer than that, other things won't. So I'll keep it on 2 minutes, and you run it, and in the bottom of the tank, you can see the resin being clouding up now. In the bottom of the tank there is a propeller, a sort of rotor blade, but it's not it's free of the motor driver. It's actually being driven magnetically, so it's sort of disturbing the alcohol and causing a washing effect like a washing machine without having any way of the alcohol seeping out and into any mechanisms or out of the vat. So that's quite clever. After a minute it will stop, and then the rotor blades will go around again in the opposite direction. So there we go, that's after a minute, so it's slowing down, and then it's going to pick up speed again and go around the other way. Some people do brush the model as well. I've found that this is sufficient so far in my experience. This is sufficient to clean the model entirely of the raw resin. Other people use an ultrasonic machine to do a similar process to this. But anyway, so while this is just running, there's something I forgot to tell you on the previous one. That the ACW list of files has actually got lots of things like trains, train carriages, railway lines, artillery, which is what I meant to mention to you. So it's got some kind of 1860s weaponry, which I can now use. Some of it was around in the 1850s for the period of the Crimean War. So I'm planning to print some of that. And steamships as well, paddle steamers. So again, some of those would be all right. There's some of the classic Mississippi paddle steamers that have to be America, but there's another one that I reckon would look pretty good for colonial wargaming. The Nile and the Sudan and all that. So there's all kinds of possibilities. Right, so having shown you the washing part of this, this also has a curing function, because this model, you have to imagine a model that is now been washed of all the uncured resin, so it would have had a very kind of viscous film on it. It's still only partially cured. So the light emitting from that will have cured a layer at a time, but it still has a sort of soft, spongy feel to it. It's not, and what you should do is leave it now to cure. Sometimes that can take up to about 10 hours if you leave it in strong sunlight, but of course you don't always have strong sunlight. So you put the model onto this platform here, switch it to cure function, and again set the time, and press go, and a set of UV lights come on, 2 different wavelengths, the platform's rotating, and it's exposing the model to neat ultraviolet light of 2 particular specific wavelengths, because different resins have different curing properties. And again, I've set it for 2 minutes. It doesn't stop and rotate the other way. There would be no point, because when the model was pointing at the lights, it's still the same point. So at the end of 2 minutes, this will just stop. Bob's your uncle. And when it comes out, it's completely hardened. It's best to let it dry completely, but it doesn't take long to dry if you've been washing it in alcohol before you actually then start the curing process. But it's really handy, this. Wargamers Anonymous had built a little curing cabinet out of a reflective bread bin that he'd put UV light diodes in, but I lack the skill and ability to be able to do that, so this has solved that particular problem. So really happy with this. So there you go, that's the start of my 3D printing adventure. As I say, I'm going to create a new playlist from now on, because it's not going to just be wargaming related. There's all kinds of things, household items, you know, flower pots. You can do what you want. You can just do anything that's you know, resin print capable of being resin printed. You can make models of. I'm thinking of bus, chess sets, all kinds of things. But obviously my main interest is going to be in producing models and so on, and using those in Wargame. So thanks for watching. Still got my interest in animation, so I'll put a tiny little animated piece of those Wild West figures that you saw earlier at the end of this. Skip past it if you're not interested, it's only a couple of minutes. Thanks for watching again, see you on the next video. Bye for now.